Let's have a chat. Well, you guys didn't ask, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. Here's the truth of it. Revision is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I don't mean that in a way of like, it's mentally harder. I think it's just like harder to physically know what you're capable of. And by physically, I mean mentally. So maybe I do mean it's mentally harder. Let me start over. I had an original timeline, and if you have watched any of my previous videos where I've talked about this project or how this debut novel is going, by the way, hi, my name is Andy. I am a debut author working on her first novel, House of Aphtos. It is currently in draft 2 of the revision process. And originally I had set a timeline to hopefully, potentially, maybe dream scenario, publish this in spring or summer of 2025. It has come to my attention that that deadline I had set for myself is slowly slipping farther and farther and farther away. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I really have been wrestling with that and what that means for all these other kind of expectations I had set on myself. And one of those major expectations, which I talked about very clearly on this channel, was trying to get through as much of revision of draft 2 as I could in October before starting November's writing challenge. Now, just as a quick side note disclaimer, I'm not going to spend a ton of time explaining this, but I am planning to participate in NaNo. I'm not participating in NaNo with the organization. If you're new to this community, NaNoWriMo is traditionally an organization that is for the writing community, and in the month of November, they have always done a NaNoWriMo challenge where you write 50,000 words and try to draft a whole novel in 1 month, and you can track your progress with their platform. I didn't get to participate in this last year or any years prior to this, given that this is my first year on AuthorTube, and I didn't know that it existed prior to May of 2024. So I am planning to try and draft 50,000 words in November, and I have talked about how I'm planning for that to be the sequel to House of Aphtos, to keep moving forward in this planned trilogy. I was trying to move through as much revision for House of Aphtos to be able to draft the second book so I could have some plot things in place and just kind of feel confident as I step back into the creative mindset of drafting instead of revising. So anyway, long story short, I am planning to try and draft book 2 of this series in November, and I'm planning to do 50,000 words. So in my own way, I am planning to participate in NaNo. However, I do not plan to track things with the organization or really keep up with that. I've never really been involved with the organization, so I don't know much in depth about the details of it. I don't stand with their view on AI and writing. I think that's being really felt in all of AuthorTube and the writing community right now. However, I don't think the fact that that's their stance means that I shouldn't be allowed to try and draft 50,000 words in November. So anyway, call it what you want. I'm just gonna call it the challenge of November or November writing challenge or whatever comes out of my mouth. But if I call it NaNo once or twice, that's what I'm referring to, but not necessarily tied to the organization. I hope that that all makes sense. So I had talked very explicitly on this channel about the fact that I was trying to revise all of basically anything that I could. The whole goal was the whole book before the start of November. By the second week of October, I had already revised up through part 1 of House of Aphtos and even sent it off to a critique partner to get some feedback as I moved forward into part 2. If you saw my video last week, you saw me have a breakdown over some part 2 edits, and here comes the ugly truth, guys. I'm just gonna lay it out there. I have not written, revised, or even brainstormed in the last week. Aside from posting that YouTube video last week, I have been hands off of this project, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, it's been great. I think it's what I needed. So today I want to just have an honest, cozy chat about what it means to set expectations for yourself, to give yourself grace within those changes, how I'm feeling about this, and the whole point of this video kind of diaries that I'm doing on this channel is to document what it's like drafting a novel for the first time and working towards a self-publishing goal for the first time. And here's what I've learned. You can't predict every curve and every turn that this project will take you on. I have not been able to stick to these deadlines that I've given myself, and it's nice being in the self-publishing route, knowing that I don't have an editor or a publisher breathing down my neck for those things. But it's also been a little bit stressful because I know that if I don't have those things, who's gonna push me? How am I gonna get those deadlines done? And who's to say that at some point this project doesn't fall dead in the water. I'm the only person holding myself accountable to finishing this. And that's definitely a double-edged sword. There's a lot of benefit within that, but there's also a lot of risk for failure within that. And I acknowledge that. It's the path I'm choosing as a self-publishing, pursuing author. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what this last week has looked like for me as I've not been working on the House of Aphes project and as I've been trying to get in the mind space to go back to drafting in November. Because frankly, I'm a little nervous to draft the second book when I have not been feeling super inspired in revision for book one. So I've had these doubts like, should I not do the November writing challenge at all? Should I just keep revising? Should I take a break for longer than a week from this project? Like, is that what I need? Do I need space? Should I just set the book one to the side and go ahead and start drafting book two and know that maybe a lot of it will need rewritten in the long run, but it'll make me a better writer in the process and all these things. And so anyway, if you are in the same boat as me and you're a little overwhelmed, or you've realized that maybe setting these hard deadlines for yourself is not actually the best way to get to the product that you're hoping for, then that's okay. I have come to this realization that quality matters a lot more to me in my writing than quantity of time. So if I can't crank out this book in the year or year and a half that I was hoping that it would take, that's fine. And that was an ambitious goal when I set it. I knew that writing my first book and getting it to a point of peak quality in 14 months was going to be insane. So the fact that I'm now thinking, maybe it'll take a year and a half, maybe it'll take 2 years, that's okay too. And I don't need to see that as a failure, and neither do you if you're in a similar situation where you're having to make these adjustments that make you a little uncomfortable or a little disappointed in yourself. There are some things that I've realized come along with drafting that don't come along with revision. And for me, one of those things is just like mass amounts of inspiration in my head. I felt like when I was drafting this book, especially being a plantser or a pantser or whatever you want to call it, I'm someone who constantly has a lot of ideas banging around in his head and world building going on and dialogue conversations and scenes building in my head and all these things. And anyway, sorry, that was kind of chaotic. The point is, when I was drafting, I felt like drafting is a safe space just to let those things flow. You don't really have to put them through this ringer of, will this actually work in terms of critical story building skills and in terms of, is this prose the best prose that it should be to be put in the hands of a reader? And all these questions that ultimately, when you go through these second, third, fourth, fifth drafts, you're asking yourself. And for me, drafting was so not easy. I mean, building a whole story out of nothing is definitely no easy feat, but it's the part of writing that I think I felt most skilled or equipped to do. These parts of revision and editing and actually working on story structure from a craft level, these are the parts of writing that I don't have experience with, which kind of sucks to admit, but if you're a first-time writer and you're like me and you've just enjoyed creative writing throughout your life, and now you're sitting down thinking, I think I'm capable of achieving this goal of writing a book, but there's a lot of steps between having a passion for writing and becoming a successful author. So how do I get from point A to point Z? And I'm realizing that I was equipped to do the first step and feel pretty confident or excited the whole way through. And just because I'm struggling on the next step of revision and editing and critique and all those things doesn't mean I'm not equipped. It just means I'm learning. And that's a beautiful thing. So here's what I'm learning about myself in this process that might be useful to you. Number one, I have heard this from a million different authors, and did I listen to it? Kind of. Did I actually put it into my life and practice it? No. And that's to stay reading. I have read other people's writing in terms of slight critique or things like that throughout this process, but it has been months, if not almost a year, since I have been engrossed in a book or a series and just felt like I'm living in another universe that another writer has created. And there's something to be said about, it's almost like active research. Even if you're not planning to structure your writing in a similar style to that author's tone or voice or world building or description or imagery, I could go on and on and on. It's still like reading papers that are articles published in a field of study that you're in. It's just like you're learning more knowledge about a craft that's meaningful to you, or walking through an art exhibit if you want to be a painter or a sculptor or whatever. Just being surrounded by other people who enjoy the same craft as you is so useful for your internal dialogue of A, capability, like telling yourself you can do it, but B, letting different things influence your writing in a positive way. And it's been months since I've let myself do that. When I was drafting, I was very afraid to read anything in the fantasy genre for multiple reasons. Number one, I think that reading fantasy takes a lot of attention, especially if it's a bulky series that has a lot of world building that really takes a lot from you as the audience to make sure that you're tracking along to get that you'll actually get the story at the end. And I was really afraid that if I put my attention into building another world in my head by reading this book, then I wouldn't be able to build my own world, especially not without tainting it with details from these other series, which leads to me to the second reason I didn't want to read fantasy specifically. I was not afraid, that's kind of a strong word, but I felt a turnoff towards the idea of reading other fantasy authors' works during the time of drafting because I wanted to be inspired by their series or feel like I could create something of my own by reading theirs and feeling like, oh, that's awesome, I could do that. But I didn't in any way want to pull elements that felt familiar and that an audience would go, she obviously read blank book before writing her own series. And to me, I don't want to take another author's work. And so I think I stayed away from all these things that could be similar to my genre in any way. So that way I knew what I was drafting was my work and that it was coming out of my mind. And sure, that was a good idea in theory, but now here I am back at block 1 for drafting of book 2, and I feel like my inspiration has run dry. Before I drafted book 1, in the last 2 years leading up to that, I had read a lot. I kind of got back into reading heavily in my last year of college, and then the whole first year of being out of college. I read so much, and that was partially just because I wasn't in school anymore and I had the time, but that led to so much inspiration for story and world building and characters and just the importance of reading and writing in our world and all those fuzzies and warm feelings that you get if you enjoy reading and writing. I was high on those going into drafting House of Vaethos, and that helped a ton. And basically, I have deprived myself of that throughout the drafting and revision process, and it's coming back to bite me in the butt. About a year ago, I read Fourth Wing. I did not read Iron Flame at the time. Honestly, just hot take. I really liked Fourth Wing, but I had coworkers who loved it, like raved about it. So I went in with these really high expectations, and they were like, it's a 5 out of 5. It's absolutely excellent. And I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5, or maybe a 4 out of 5. There was elements I loved in that it was just like, this has some tried and true tropes in it for sure. But also, are they too tried and true? Was kind of where I was at. And it may have been my fault for reading it at a time where I was getting a little burnt out on reading the same type of story over and over again, but I kept reading the same type of story over and over again. So anyway, I've taken a break from that series for like a year, but this past week I just picked up Iron Flame again and I have been reading it. I'm not very far, but I have this great edition with the black edges, which is so fun. I love that. So I've been reading this again, and honestly, it's been refreshing just to be back in another author's world and not have to think as much to build it, just to read and observe and take it in, and I really enjoy that. But also to read critically. I think that's something that authors talk about a lot, and if you're a new writer, you absolutely should know the importance of critical reading. Read other stories, even if they're published, well-known stories, with a critical eye. Look at the story structure, look at the character development, look at the subplots, look at the Easter eggs the author drops throughout. Try to predict things. I do that all the time, especially if it's a book like a fantasy book or a mystery thriller or something like that, that typically has some type of plot twist built into it. I will often try to see if I can catch details as the reader, because I think that helps me on a subconscious level learn about story structure throughout the reading experience, even though I'm having fun just reading another author's book. Critical reading and just reading for fun. 2 things I've done in the past week. I also got my Kindle working for the first time again. This has not been working for, I don't know, months now. I read a book on my Kindle in the spring, and then I had a issue with my Amazon account, so then it locked me out and wouldn't let me log into my Kindle, but now it's finally working again, so I have Kindle Unlimited back, which we all know Kindle Unlimited can have some great finds and also some really random books on there, but they're cheap or free, which is great. Anyway, so I am gonna get back to reading on this as well, which is just a great way. I don't know if If I'm the only person, I'm sure I'm not. But sometimes I read something that's a physical print book super slow, and if I get the same thing on my Kindle, I'll fly through it. So sometimes I like to bounce between the two. And anyway, yeah, so I've started reading again, and this has been really critical. The next thing that I did, besides just literally taking a break and not touching the project, let's call that number 2. Number 2 is that I just didn't try to force myself to work on the project. I didn't want to put active work into this book and then feel like all of it was for nothing, and I didn't like the work that I did because I didn't feel inspired on it, and that I was gonna have to go back and scrap it all and redo it. I would have rather just taken a break and let myself have a breather to know that when I sit back down for the next time, I'm feeling excited to be with those characters, I'm feeling inspired, and I'm feeling joy for doing something that I love. And because I have the liberty of not having an editor or a literary agent or a publishing house pushing deadlines at me, then I get to take that break, and I have that liberty to say, you should pause for a while, Andy, and come back to this in a little bit. So I'm grateful for that. Oh, hold on. I gotta go let my dog in. Okay, I'm back, but I was running up the stairs to come back up here after I let Bennett in, and I tripped and stubbed my toe so bad on the edge of the stair, like literally my toes right into the stair tread. Oh my gosh, and I feel like a wimp right now, but I literally was like, did I just break my freaking toe? And I don't think I did, but gosh. Okay, sorry for that slight intermission. Back to it. Okay, the third thing that I've done in the past week to help myself get out of this rut, I think I'm a creative person, or I know that I'm a creative person in more ways than just writing. I really enjoy baking. I really enjoy cooking. I really enjoy home design and doing projects with my husband around the house. Things like that just get me feeling well-rounded. I think when I spend so much of my creative energy in one point for too long, it's almost exhausting in a different way instead of having energy in all these little pockets. So on Saturday, first of all, since we ran the Chicago Marathon, this is one of the first weekends that we don't have some crazy either long run or we don't have to travel to go somewhere. Like, our plans are finally settling down, which feels so nice for the fall, to just watch the leaves change outside and feel like I can sit and just enjoy life. Anyway, on Saturday morning, I got up, I did a little bit of cleaning, I went to the grocery store, I restocked our fridge, I cleaned out what was bad in the fridge, I physically cleaned the fridge. I had kind of looked at some recipes prior to going to the store of things I knew I wanted to make, and then I came home and I literally spent all day on Saturday listening to Tony Bennett and Frank Sinatra and Michael Bublé and Perry Como and all the fall feels music. And I made a homemade pumpkin sauce for our espresso machine so that way we can have homemade pumpkin spice lattes. Delicious, by the way. I made chocolate chip pumpkin protein muffins. I made an apple pie that I make every year that's like my special recipe and I love it. And then we had friends over for a game night and I made a autumn wild rice soup and we had bread. And that was great. I got to cook all day long. I was in the kitchen doing things with my hands. I didn't have to think that much. It was just following instructions and doing things I enjoyed, and it still felt creative. And at the end of it, I got to share it with people that I love, and that felt really rewarding as well. So anyway, that was one thing I did on Saturday all day long that felt so rewarding and relaxing for me and creative in a different way. And then on Sunday, we went to church, came home, and I literally got to read for most of the afternoon, which was also wonderful. And my husband and I kind of drew up a new idea. We have this piece of walnut that's like raw wood that my mom gave us, and it's beautiful. And we came up with the utilization for that. My husband loves to do woodworking and kind of craftsmanship, things like that. He built the desk that I write at in most of my videos, and he's gonna build a kind of coffee bar for us that has space that's designed for the espresso machine on one side, all the little tools on the right, and then our trash can is just a generic black plastic trash can right now. So he's gonna build a compartment that has like a pull-out thing for it where it'll kind of lean out on an angle and you can throw stuff away, and then it'll just hide nice and pretty back into the cabinet. So anyway, we drew up the designs for that together. We took the measurements together of what that might look like. We brainstormed the design, the materials we'll need. Anyway, the whole thing was so much fun, and that felt creative as well because, again, had nothing to do with my book, but felt artistic and creative, and like I got to have a say in something that will someday come to be physically in front of us, which was cool because we did kind of work together on the desk that he redid for me as well. So anyway, that was the third thing I did that kind of felt like a refresh or a reset button on everything that's in the creative well for me. So those are the 3 things I've done. I started reading again, both critically and for fun. I took a break and went hands off for literally, it's been 8 days now, which for me right now at this point in the process feels like a long break. And I did creative things outside of writing that kind of helped me refill the creative well in alternative ways. So yeah, those are the things I've done. Those are the things that I think are setting me up to succeed in revision. The last thing I've done that I think everyone who is in the same boat as me should do is I have let go of expectations that are not fair to keep on myself. One of those was finishing a book in a year, which was, I don't know. Don't even talk to me about it. I don't know why I thought I could do that. It's because a year ago, Andy was a very ambitious and optimistic girly. And for the rate I drafted this book at, you would think that that would have been plausible, but it's hard to work a 40-hour-a-week job, run a marathon and train all the miles and hours that you have to do outside of just the marathon day, and have a healthy marriage, healthy relationships, be involved in extracurriculars, and write a book. Like, I don't know why I thought I was Superwoman, but here's the newsflash. I'm not, and I'm okay with it. I love that. I'm happy, and I'm excited more than anything. I am so excited to keep moving forward in this project and know that I'm working on it as a better version of myself than I was before. And that means I'm gonna have a better story to be told and a better story to put in the hands of readers. And that makes me more excited than anything. I do wanna say a brief kind of thank you and pre-excitement celebratory. We are nearing 1,000 subscribers and I am so grateful. I started this channel with the thought that if I could find 100, maybe 200 people who I didn't know that might relate to my interests and my story for writing and my passion for writing, then it would be well worth uploading however many videos it took to meet those people. And the community that we've started to build on this channel, the people who interact with me in the comments each video, who like the videos, it literally means the world to me. I'm in disbelief at the number of people who care to watch me talk about something I love. And if you are one of those people, maybe this is your first video watching me, maybe watched every single one, no matter who you are or why you're watching, I'm so grateful that you deem this worthwhile to watch. I appreciate you. I cannot wait to get to know you more, and I am so thankful for all the people who have joined in. If you're new here and you enjoyed this video and would like to hear more about my journey of becoming a self-published author, please consider subscribing, liking, maybe leave a comment down below and introduce yourself. I love to get to know my new subscribers. And if you're returning and you are one of my people, then would you consider comment and liking on this video as well? As always, I'll see you guys next week for another video as we brainstorm book 2 for the House of Aphtos series. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week. Mwah!